At Thanksgiving, my parents said I was a useless failure and threw me out. Go live in the streets. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 3:41 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day with my hands already clean and my stomach already tight. It wasn't from hunger. It was from the quiet math I always did before walking into their house. What I could say, what I couldn't, what would get turned into a joke, and what would be repeated later as a story about me. My name is Noah. I'm 28. I don't talk much in groups. I'm the kind of person people forget is in the room until they need something fixed, moved, printed, or explained. I'd brought 2 pies from a bakery on 6th Street, pumpkin and pecan, and a bottle of sparkling cider because my mom had posted on Facebook about keeping it family-friendly. She didn't mean that. She meant she wanted photos that looked a certain way. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Wreath on the door, fake corn husks tied to the railings, the smell of cinnamon candles trying to cover the smell of turkey grease. From the street, it was the kind of home people described as warm. Inside, everything was arranged like a showroom. My mother Denise opened the door before I could knock. She had her phone in her hand, already recording. "Here he is," she said. Camera tilted down like it was an accident, catching my shoes, my jeans, the plain sweater I'd chosen on purpose. Noah made it. "Everybody say hi to Noah." Behind her, the dining room was already full. Plates clinked. Someone laughed too loudly at something that wasn't funny. My father, Frank, sat at the head of the table as if the chair belonged to him. By law, I stepped inside and held out the pies. "Those are nice," my mother said, not taking them immediately. Her eyes flicked toward the pie boxes like she was checking the label. "From where?" "Cedar and crust," I said. She finally took them and turned back toward the kitchen without thanking me. "We'll see if they're too sweet," she called over her shoulder. I took my coat off and hung it on the hook, the one I used as a kid. It still creaked in the same spot. My sister Rachel came around the corner with a glass of wine and a grin that never quite reached her eyes. She hugged me with one arm, her other hand still holding her phone. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said. "You look the same." "Happy Thanksgiving," I said back. Rachel was 32, married, and good at performing success. The house, the car, the photos, the constant captions about gratitude. She had the kind of confidence that didn't come from certainty but from knowing people usually didn't challenge her. Her husband Jared nodded at me from the couch like I was a coworker who had just walked into a company party. "What's up, man? Hey," I said. I moved toward the living room, where relatives I saw twice a year sat in a semicircle around my parents' curated life. Aunts with tight smiles, uncles with loud opinions, cousins I used to share rooms with on holidays who now treated me like I was part of the decor. I said hello in a steady voice. I shook hands. I kept my answers short. "How's work?" someone asked. "Busy," I said. "What do you do again?" another asked, like it was a harmless question. "I manage operations for a small logistics firm," I said. They nodded like that meant nothing. A pause followed. The kind of pause that gets filled with assumptions. My mother filled it for them. "Noah's still figuring things out," she said from the doorway, loud enough for the whole room. "He's always been slow to launch." Rachel laughed into her glass. "Mom!" "It's true," my mother said, smiling. "We can be honest. It's family." The word family in our house was a tool. It meant anything could be said without consequence, because you were supposed to take it. I didn't react. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend myself. I walked to the kitchen and placed myself near the counter, where I could help if needed. That's what I did. I made myself useful in ways that couldn't be mocked, because they were practical. My father walked in a minute later with a carving knife like it was a symbol. "Look who finally showed up," he said. "I'm on time," I said. He glanced at the clock, then at me, then smirked. "Sure. On time, for once." He leaned against the counter and lowered his voice just enough for it to feel private while still being audible to anyone nearby. "You still living in that little apartment?" "Yes," I said. He made a sound like the answer was embarrassing. "You know, when I was your age," he said, "I had a mortgage. I had a family. I had responsibilities." I didn't answer. He took my silence as permission. "Rachel's doing great," he continued, loud now, turning his head toward the living room where people could hear. "Promotion! Nice neighborhood! Grandkid on the way! That's what adulthood looks like." Rachel appeared in the kitchen as if summoned by her own name. "Dad," she said, smiling, "like it was cute." "Stop," my father grinned. "I'm proud. What can I say?" He looked at me again. "And you're still what?" "Moving boxes for a living?" I met his eyes. "Logistics," I said again, calm. "Same thing," he said, waving it off. "Manual labor with extra steps." Rachel laughed. Jared leaned in the doorway and joined, like it was a group sport. I watched them the way you watch people talk loudly in a restaurant, aware of the noise, but not part of it. My mother started arranging appetizers on a tray and glanced at me. "Noah," she said, "could you take these into the dining room?" "Sure," I said. I picked up the tray and walked in. Conversations paused as I passed, then resumed behind my back. I set the tray down and stepped aside. Nobody said thank you. People just started picking at the food.
It wasn't the worst thing, it was the pattern.
It had been like this since I was 16, when I didn't make varsity football and my father told me, in front of the whole team at the end of season banquet, that some boys are born winners and some boys are born excuses. Everyone laughed because they thought he was joking. He wasn't. At 19, when I chose a state school instead of the expensive private college my parents wanted to brag about, my mother told her friends I couldn't handle the pressure. She said it while I was standing next to her, with my acceptance letter still folded in my pocket. At 24, when I moved out and stopped asking them for help, they acted like I had failed them personally. Like independence was an insult. Now every holiday had become a stage. I leaned against the hallway wall, listening to the rhythm of it all. My mother's laugh when someone complimented her table settings. My father's voice rising when he talked about politics and hard work. Rachel's bright, practiced tone when she talked about her journey. Jared's convenient agreement. And my name, sprinkled in like a garnish.
Noah's always been sensitive. Noah's just not ambitious.
Noah needs more direction. They said it casually, like weather. At 5:12 p.m., my mother clapped her hands. "Dinner," she called, and her phone went up again. "Everyone gather." "I want a quick photo." People shuffled into place. My mother directed them like a photographer. She positioned Rachel beside her, Jared beside Rachel, my father centered in me. After a moment's hesitation, at the far end close enough to prove I was included but far enough to be cropped if needed.
"Smile," my mother said.
"Noah, stand up straighter." Shoulders back. "You look sad."
"I'm fine," I said. "Don't be weird," she whispered,
still smiling at the camera. The photo was taken. Then the phones went down, and the real mood returned. We sat, my father said grace, more performance than prayer. He thanked God for the blessings of family and the reward of discipline. He didn't mention kindness. He didn't mention patience. He didn't mention humility. The food was served. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, stuffing. My mother watched people eat like she was waiting for applause. The first 10 minutes were tolerable. All talk about traffic, weather, someone's new kitchen remodel. Then my father did what he always did when the table was full. He turned it into a trial. "So," he said, carving turkey with slow confidence, "what's new with you, Noah?" I kept my voice even. "Work's been steady." We onboarded a new client last month. My father nodded like he was indulging me.
"A client?" he repeated. "That's nice."
Rachel sipped her wine. "Are you still at that same place?" she asked, eyebrows raised in that innocent way that wasn't innocent. "Yes," I said. "How long has it been?" she asked, like she was counting years of failure. 3 years, I said. My mother tilted her head. "And you're still renting?" "Yes," I said. My father put his knife down. "So no promotions, no house, no engagement, no plans." The room quieted, not because they cared, but because they recognized a familiar scene. People leaned back slightly, preparing to watch. I looked around the table. My aunt's eyes flicked away. My cousin focused hard on his plate. Someone cleared their throat. My father smiled. "I'm asking because I worry," he said in the tone people use when they want credit for cruelty. "We're not going to be around forever. So sad. What are you going to do when you can't lean on us?" I didn't lean on them. I hadn't in years. But correcting him wouldn't help. It would just give him something to argue against. So I said, "I'm handling my responsibilities." My mother laughed softly. "Like what? Your phone bill?" A few chuckles. Rachel looked down, smiling. I took a sip of water and set the glass down carefully. The clink was small, but clear. My father nodded toward me, as if addressing the whole table. "This is what I mean," he said. "He thinks showing up to a job is the same as building a life." I didn't react, he continued, encouraged by the silence. "Your sister is building something," he said. "A family, a legacy. You're floating." Rachel placed a hand on her stomach, just noticeable enough for people to see. She hadn't announced anything openly, but the gesture was intentional. Eyes followed it. Smiles spread. My mother's face brightened. She loved anything that made her look successful by association. My father looked satisfied. Then he turned back to me like I was an example. "Sometimes," he said, "a person needs tough love." He said it like he was about to do me a favor. My mother leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We've been talking," she said. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Not because I was surprised, but because the tone changed. When Denise said we've been talking, it meant a decision had already been made. It meant they wanted an audience. I put my fork down. "Yes," I said. Rachel's eyes flicked up, alert now. Jared sat a little straighter. My father folded his hands. "We think," my mother said, "it's time you stop pretending everything is fine." My father nodded. "You're almost 30, Noah." My mother's smile stayed fixed. "And you're still acting like life is going to just happen to you." I looked at them, then at the people watching. The room held its breath in that familiar way, half uncomfortable, half entertained. My father's voice dropped, sharper now. "If you can't figure it out under your own power," he said, "maybe you need to learn what it feels like to have nothing." My mother added lightly, like a joke, "Maybe then you'll appreciate what you've been given." A few uneasy laughs. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what they meant because I already knew they were building toward something. I picked up my napkin and wiped my mouth with slow precision, giving them nothing to grab onto. Then I placed the napkin on my plate and met my father's eyes. "Okay," I said quietly. My father's smile widened, like he thought my calm was surrender. He took a breath, preparing to say the next line louder, and I let him. Because I'd learned something over the years. People like my parents didn't fear anger. They feared documentation. They feared silence that remembered everything. I sat back in my chair, composed, and waited for him to finish what he'd started, while the entire table watched. My father didn't raise his voice when he finished. He didn't need to. "After dinner," he said, steady and certain, "we're going to talk about next steps." My mother nodded like this had been planned weeks ago. "We just want what's best for you." The table exhaled. Plates scraped. Someone reached for gravy like the moment had passed. It hadn't. I ate quietly. I made sure my plate was clean. I thanked my aunt when she passed the bread. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't leave early. I didn't give them the satisfaction of discomfort. I watched. My father's confidence grew as the wine level dropped. He retold stories where he was always right and others were always learning. My mother laughed at the exact moments she was supposed to. Rachel slipped into the rhythm easily, chiming in with anecdotes about responsibility and adult decisions, glancing at me each time as if I were the footnote. At 6:38 p.m., my mother stood and began clearing plates. "Noah," she said casually, "why don't you help your father in the den? The den! The room where serious conversations happened." Leather chairs, framed certificates, photos of achievements that weren't mine. I stood without comment and followed my father down the hall. He closed the door behind us. The room smelled like old books and aftershave. He didn't sit. He leaned against the desk like a manager preparing to fire someone. "You embarrassed us today," he said. I waited. "You come in here every holiday," he continued, "acting like you're fine when you're clearly not." "I didn't say that," I replied. He waved his hand. "That's not the point." He crossed his arms. "Your mother and I have decided we're done enabling this." I met his eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "we're cutting the cord." I nodded once. "Okay." That surprised him. He adjusted his stance. "You don't get to just say okay. This is serious." "I understand," I said. He frowned. "Do you?" "Yes." He pushed off the desk and walked a few steps closer, lowering his voice like that made him reasonable. "We paid for your car insurance," he said. "Your phone plan. We let you store things in the garage. We've helped more than you admit." "You offered," I said. He scoffed. There it is. Always defensive. I didn't respond. "We think," he continued, "it's time you experience real consequences." I waited. "So," he said, finally saying it, "after tonight, you're not welcome to keep using this house as a safety net."
I processed the words carefully. "You mean—"
"Don't visit?" I asked. "No," he said.
"I mean, don't rely on us. Don't come here if things get tough."
"Don't assume we'll catch you." My mother opened the door without knocking and stepped in, wiping her hands on a towel. "And," she added, "we think it's best if you move your things out of the garage by the end of the week." I nodded again.
"Okay."
She tilted her head. "That's it? No questions?" "What would you like me to ask?" I said. My father looked irritated now. Calm wasn't what he wanted. He wanted resistance. He wanted something to overpower. "You really don't get it," he said. "We're saying if you fail, that's on you. No more help." "I've been covering my expenses for years," I said. My mother laughed. "Oh, please. You think we don't know how much things cost?" She glanced at my father, then back at me. "If you can't afford life," she said, "maybe you should see what it's like without comfort." The words hung there. I looked at both of them. "Are you asking me to leave?" I asked. My father hesitated for half a second. Then he straightened. "If that's what it takes," he said. My mother crossed her arms. "You're an adult." There it was. The thing they could repeat later, polished and simplified. "We didn't kick him out. He chose independence." I nodded slowly. "Understood." My father looked almost disappointed. "You can go back out there now," he said. "We'll finish dinner." I walked out of the den and back into the dining room, where dessert was being served like nothing had happened. My mother announced coffee. Rachel showed someone photos on her phone. Laughter resumed. "No one?" asked where I'd been. At 7:14 p.m., my father clinked his glass. "Before dessert," he said, smiling broadly, "I want to say something." My chest stayed steady. My hands stayed relaxed. "This holiday," he continued, "is about gratitude and growth." He looked directly at me. "And sometimes," he said, "growth comes from letting go." My mother laughed lightly. Rachel nodded. "So," my father said, raising his glass, "here's to tough love." A few people hesitated. Then glasses clinked. I raised mine too. At 8:02 p.m., coats were being gathered, hugs exchanged. My mother posed for one last photo, careful to stand between Rachel and my father, with me just off to the side again. I hugged my aunt goodbye. I thanked my cousin for coming. When I reached for my coat, my mother touched my arm. "You can leave your key," she said quietly. I looked at her hand, then at her face. "Sure," I said. I took the key off my ring and placed it on the console table. My father watched from the doorway, arms crossed, expression satisfied. "Good," he said. "This will be good for you." I nodded. "I hope so." Outside, the air was cold and clean. My car started on the first turn. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't call anyone. I drove home. My apartment was quiet. I set the pies on the counter, unopened. I sat at the small kitchen table and opened my laptop. Not to vent, not to post. Not to text Rachel something she could screenshot and share. I opened a folder I'd created months earlier and never thought I'd need. Inside it were subfolders labeled with dates. I added a new one, 2025-1127. Thanksgiving. I typed out a timeline while everything was fresh. Times, exact phrases. Who was present? Where people were sitting? What was said in public? What was said privately? I didn't add opinions. I added facts. Then I did something else. I logged into my bank account. I downloaded statements going back 5 years. I highlighted every recurring expense: rent, utilities, insurance, phone, student loan payments. All paid by me. I logged into my email and searched for messages from my parents. There were more than I remembered, offers of help attached to conditions. Messages that contradicted what they said publicly. Texts where my mother insisted I store things at the house because family helps family.
I saved them. I opened my cloud storage and created a secure backup.
Then I checked something that had been bothering me for a while. 2 years earlier, my father had insisted on putting my name on a family emergency account. He said it was for transparency, for trust. At the time, it sounded responsible. I logged in. The balance was lower than expected. Much lower. I pulled transaction history. Large withdrawals, regular intervals, labeled maintenance, house expenses, family support. My name was listed as an authorized contributor. I stared at the screen, not angry, not surprised, just alert. Because suddenly, a lot of things made sense. The way my father talked about everything we've done for you. The way my mother framed generosity like leverage. The confidence with which they told people I was dependent. I downloaded the records. I added them to the folder. At 10:46 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Mom says, "This was hard on her. You should apologize." I didn't reply. I set the phone face down and closed the laptop. I went to bed at midnight and slept without dreaming. The next morning, at 9:17 a.m., I received an email from my father. Subject. Next steps. The message was short, clinical. He outlined a timeline for removing my belongings from the garage. He reminded me not to list their address on any documents. He ended with, "We're doing this because we care." I forwarded the email to my secure folder. Then I noticed the attachment, a spreadsheet. It was titled Support Provided to Noah. I opened it, and that's when I found the key receipt, one they never intended me to see. I didn't open the spreadsheet immediately. I saved it first, then I duplicated it. Then I exported it as a PDF and stored it in 2 separate locations. Only after that did I read it line by line. The spreadsheet was neat, categorized, confident. The kind of document someone makes when they expect it to be shown later. Column A, date. Column B, description. Column C, amount. Column D, notes. The total sat at the bottom in bold. $46,730. Labeled, Estimated Financial Support Provided. I read each line slowly. Car insurance, estimated. Phone plan, family rate. Emergency fund contributions, shared. Storage space, fair market value. Emotional support, unquantified. I stopped at that one for a moment, then I kept going. What struck me wasn't the inflation, it was the attribution. Several entries were amounts I had paid myself, routed through accounts my father had insisted we simplify years ago, transfers I recognized, deposits I could trace, withdrawals that aligned with his maintenance labels. The spreadsheet didn't just exaggerate their generosity, it rewrote reality. And it did so cleanly enough that, if shown without context, it would look convincing. That's when I understood the real purpose of Thanksgiving. They hadn't just wanted to shame me. They wanted a paper trail, a story that could be told later backed by numbers about how they tried and how I failed. I didn't confront them. I didn't email back. I didn't ask questions that would tip them off. I replied with one sentence. "Thanks for sending this." "I'll review." That was it. Over the next 2 weeks, I did exactly what they asked. I picked up my boxes from the garage on December 2nd. At 6:10 p.m., my mother stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. My father didn't come out. I loaded everything myself. Childhood books, a spare desk, winter coats I hadn't taken when I moved out. Before I left, my mother said, "I hope this motivates you." "I'm sure it will," I replied. She watched me drive away like she expected regret to follow. It didn't. What followed instead was quiet preparation. I requested full statements from the family emergency account, not summaries, originals. I cross-referenced them with my own bank records. Dates lined up, amounts matched, patterns emerged. I created a timeline. Year 1, contributions framed as mutual. Year 2, churn, language shifts toward obligation. Year 3, withdrawals labeled as support, though no money ever came to me. Year 4, spreadsheet constructed. I saved screenshots of every transaction. I highlighted discrepancies. I noted where their spreadsheet listed expenses that never occurred. Then I expanded outward. I searched my email for phrases my mother used often. Just in case, family helps, Don't tell anyone. I found messages where she asked me to route payments through shared accounts to keep things simple, messages where she thanked me for covering it this time. I saved those too. I pulled my credit report, explained nothing, verified everything, clean.
I didn't rush. I didn't act angry.
I didn't hint that anything was wrong. And my parents, sensing nothing, grew bolder. My mother posted on Facebook about the hardest part of parenting being letting go. Comments poured in, parts, praise. Messages about strength. My father started telling relatives that I was on my own now, that they had done everything they could, that sometimes you have to let people fail. It came back to me through people who meant well.
Oh, I listened.
I took notes. Rachel texted more often now, not to ask how I was, but to update me on things I was no longer invited to. We're hosting Christmas brunch. Mom says it might be awkward for you. Probably best if you skip this year, I replied politely, always briefly. Understood. Thanks for letting me know. She seemed satisfied by that. The absence of resistance confirmed her version of events. Then, in early January, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, voice warm and practiced. Hi, sweetheart. Your father and I were talking, and we think it would be really healthy for everyone if we cleared the air soon. Maybe over dinner. Just us. No tension.
I saved the voicemail.
2 days later, another call. Another voicemail. This one was shorter. We don't want this distance to become permanent. That word again. Distance. As if it were something I had created. I didn't respond. On January 14th, my father emailed again. Subject: Family Financial Summary. He attached a revised spreadsheet. More detailed this time. More polished. He wrote, We've had a few people ask questions, so I wanted to make sure we had accurate records. A few people. That was the first admission. I compared the new version to the old one. Some numbers had changed. Categories renamed. Certain transactions removed. Careless edits. They were adjusting the story as it spread. I didn't warn them. Instead, I scheduled a meeting. Not with them. With a certified financial mediator recommended by my company's legal department. Someone who specialized in family financial disputes. Someone who understood documentation, not drama. I sent one email to my parents, to Rachel, to my Aunt Carol, who had a habit of keeping the peace, and to the mediator, CCDA. Subject: Clarifying financial records. I've reviewed the documents shared with me and identified discrepancies that require clarification. To avoid misunderstandings, I've scheduled a mediated review of all financial records on February 3rd at 2 p.m. via Zoom. Attendance is optional but recommended for anyone referencing these records publicly. No emotion, no accusations, just process. Rachel called me immediately. I didn't answer, she texted. What is this? Why would you do this? I waited 3 hours. Then I replied, Accuracy matters. My mother sent an email 15 minutes later. This feels unnecessary and hostile. I didn't respond. My father waited a full day before replying. We don't need a third party. We know what we did for you. I forwarded that email to the mediator. The mediator replied to all. Attendance is voluntary. Records will be reviewed regardless. After that, the tone changed. Rachel stopped texting. My mother stopped posting vague quotes. My father sent no more spreadsheets. On February 2nd, at 9:58 p.m., my mother left one last voicemail. This one wasn't warm. I don't know what you think you're doing, she said, voice tight, but airing family matters like this is inappropriate. I saved it. The next afternoon, I logged into Zoom 5 minutes early. I checked my files one last time. Screenshots, PDFs, emails, voicemails, bank statements, timelines. At 1:59 p.m., participants began to join. First the mediator, then my Aunt Carol, then Rachel, then my parents, sitting side by side, confident, composed, unaware that the version of reality they'd been repeating was about to meet something it had never faced before, a complete record. The mediator smiled professionally and said, Thank you all for joining. Let's begin by reviewing the financial summary provided. I muted my microphone and waited. The mediator shared his screen. It was my father's spreadsheet, the revised one. Clean fonts, neutral colors, confident totals. Before we proceed, the mediator said calmly, I'd like to clarify that my role here is not to assign blame, but to verify accuracy. We'll be comparing claimed support against documented transactions. My father nodded. Of course! My mother smiled tightly. Rachel sat very still. The mediator scrolled. Let's start with the emergency account, he said. This account lists Mr. Noah, he glanced at me, as an authorized contributor, correct? Yes, my father said, for transparency. The mediator clicked to the next screen. I watched their faces change when my bank statements appeared beside the account ledger, dates aligned, amounts matched. These deposits, the mediator said, highlighting a column, originated from Noah's personal account. My father leaned forward. That was family money. The mediator nodded. We'll get to classification shortly. For now, we're verifying source. He scrolled again. These withdrawals, he continued, were made by Frank and Denise. My mother's smile faded. For household expenses. Understood, the mediator said. However, the spreadsheet categorizes these withdrawals as support provided to Noah. Silence. The mediator didn't look at me. He didn't need to. Can either of you provide documentation showing funds transferred from this account to Noah? He asked. My father cleared his throat. It was indirect support. The mediator typed something. Noted. Indirect support requires documentation. Receipts, transfers, agreements. Rachel shifted in her chair. The mediator moved on. Next category, car insurance. He pulled up a policy document. This policy, he said, lists Noah as the payer. My mother opened her mouth and closed it. The mediator highlighted the payment history. Paid monthly from Noah's account for 42 consecutive months. He paused. The spreadsheet lists this as parental support. He looked at my parents. Can you explain the discrepancy? My father's jaw tightened. We negotiated the rate. The mediator nodded. Negotiation does not constitute payment, he continued. Phone plan, storage valuation, emotional support. Each line was addressed the same way, calmly, methodically. The spreadsheet unraveled, not with drama, but with arithmetic. At 2:37 p.m., the mediator reached the total. Based on verified records, he said, the net financial support provided by Noah to shared accounts exceeds the claimed parental support by approximately $3,200. Rachel stared at the screen. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at me for the first time. I met his eyes and said nothing. The mediator cleared his throat. One final matter, he said. Several communications referenced these records being shared with third parties. He pulled up emails. My mother's words. My father's phrasing. Rachel's texts. Statements about dependence, about failure, about support we provided. Given the inaccuracies, the mediator said, continued circulation of these claims could be considered misrepresentation. No one spoke. The mediator concluded the session with a summary and next steps: corrected records, written acknowledgement, cessation of false claims. He asked if anyone had questions. My parents didn't. Rachel didn't. I unmuted. I don't have questions, I said. I have a boundary. They all looked at me. I'm not asking for apologies, I continued. I'm not asking for reimbursement. My mother's eyes narrowed. I'm asking for one thing, I said. Stop telling a story about me that isn't true. The mediator nodded. I won't participate in conversations where my character is discussed without facts, I added. If it happens again, I'll respond with documentation. I muted myself again. The meeting ended at 2:51 p.m. Number 1 stayed behind. That night, my phone was quiet. The next morning, my Aunt Carol emailed me. I didn't know.
I'm sorry, I replied with one sentence.
Thank you for attending. Rachel didn't reach out. My mother posted nothing. My father sent one final email 2 weeks later. Subject records. Updated attached was a corrected spreadsheet. No totals. No commentary. Just numbers. I archived it. Life didn't transform overnight, but it simplified. I stopped attending events where I was treated like a project. I stopped explaining myself. I focused on work. I moved to a better apartment closer to the office. In March, I was promoted. Quietly, without announcements. At Thanksgiving the following year, I cooked for myself. I invited 2 friends. We ate at a small table. No speeches, no toasts, no cameras. I slept well. Sometimes people ask if it was worth it. I tell them the truth. I didn't win anything. I just stopped carrying a story that wasn't mine, and for the first time, that felt like enough.